Hello everyone, welcome back to Fletcher Farms YouTube channel. Today we are diving into the cooling systems on two heavy hitter tractors, the John Deere 4630 and the International 966. Keeping these engines cool is critical, especially when you're running hard all day in the field. Let's break down how each tractor handles engine heat better. Okay, first up the 4630. The John Deere 4630 runs a turbocharged DT466 cubic inch diesel engine, which makes a lot of heat to get the 150 horsepower out to the ground. The system circulates coolant, a mixture of water and antifreeze, through the passages in the engine block and the head to soak up the heat. So the coolant comes through here, goes through there, or comes from the radiator, goes into the engine block, or it goes through the pump first, then it goes through the engine block, and it soaks up heat all the way when it's going through, goes back into the radiator and gets cooled off again. The water pump pushes the coolant through the passages in the block and the head. This pump is cast iron and made for very long life. After absorbing heat from the engine, the coolant flows to a large multi-core radiator, usually 3 or 4 cores, that maximizes surface area for cooling. This fan right here, which is driven off the water pump pulley, pulls air through the radiator to help cool the fluid while it passes through it. Some models, they say, had a variable speed fan. I don't think they did, but they might. So, and if it was variable speed fan, it wouldn't be pulling on the engine all the time, and that would help give more power. But I prefer these fans because there's no variable speed crap to break down. Very simple. Okay, now the thermostat. The thermostat in these tractors opens around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, controlling when coolant flows through the radiator. It helps the engine reach optimal operating temperature quickly and keeps it steady during operation. Some of these had an overflow reservoir, like our John Deere 310 backhoe back there does. And all that would do is when it started to overflow, it would come through the overflow tube, which is right here, and there would be a tank somewhere up there. I don't know where it would be at. And it would just overflow into that tank when the engine was really hot, and then when it cooled off, the tank would refill the radiator. Now, if it gets that hot, it's just going to blow it out on the ground, because this one does not have a overflow tank. But I'm not going to discuss very much more about that, because this tractor does not have one. Now on to the 966. The 966 has a naturally aspirated D414 cubic inch diesel engine, still generating a good amount of heat, but less than the Deere's turbocharged motor. Like the Deere, coolant circulates inside the block and the head, absorbing the heat. The water pump is similar to the Deere. The one thing about this tractor, just not as heavy duty, is it doesn't have but one belt. The Deere has 2 belts. I mean, same thing as the Deere. This tractor uses a copper/brass radiator. Great at transferring heat. Just like the Deere, this fan is hooked directly to the crank, so it runs at engine speed, pulling air through the radiator to cool the coolant down. Once again, this model does not have an overflow tank on it, similar to the Deere. You could get them with overflow tanks, if I'm not mistaken, but this model does not have one on it, just like the Deere. Okay, now let's discuss how the coolant system works on both tractors. As the engine runs, combustion creates heat. Coolant pumped through the engine passages absorbs this heat. The thermostat stays closed when cold to let the engine warm up faster, then opens at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit to let hot coolant flow through the radiator. Air pulled through the radiator by the fan cools the fluid. Cooled cooled coolant returns to the engine to repeat the cycle. The overflow tank catches expanding coolant and helps the maintain pressure. But both of these machines do not have overflow tanks on them. The key differences. The John Deere 4630 has a bigger multi-core radiator. The International 966 uses a similar copper brass radiator with a fixed fan speed, simpler but needing more regular maintenance. They say it needs more regular maintenance, but you don't hardly have to touch these, just like the Deere. And a lot of the stuff I just talked about, I did do some research on the internet, and I was reading it off to you because I wanted to be sure that I got it right on both of these tractors. One thing I'm going to add that I really, really like about the International is this right here. This is a coolant filter that filters the coolant as it gets passed through the radiator and the pump. This one has a thing coming off the pump. You can't see it, but it comes off the water pump and goes right here and runs it through the filter. And it gets filtered right before it goes into the oil cooler. This International engine does have an oil cooler, which helps cool the engine oil because the engine oil will overheat if it don't. So this gets filtered. A lot of people, which are kind of, I'm not going to call them dumb, but they make dumb decisions when they do not change these filters, because these filters determines on how long the O-rings on them sleeves in the engine is going to last. Most people, this needs to be changed every time you service the tractor. I don't care what the book says. I love it. It needs to be changed, because if you don't change that filter, it's just like the filter's not even there, because the filter's going to get full of crap and then it's not going to be able to get out. Now, we change the coolant in our equipment every year, once a year. Well, everybody's saying, why do you do that? Well, as the coolant passes through the engine around the sleeves, there's an O-ring on the bottom of each sleeve that keeps the coolant from falling into the engine oil. When that coolant gets dirty, it cuts those O-rings up, and then it falls into the engine oil. Also, most people call it when the water breaks in the engine. The water breaks and falls down in there. And water breaking is the O-rings. If you don't have to have a machine with the coolant filter on it. It helps a lot because you can keep the filters changed and keep the coolant clean. That's very important. Keeping clean coolant is just as good as keeping clean engine oil and clean fuel. It's just as important. Don't never overlook that. Now the Deere and most other engines don't have this filter on them. My advice to you there is change the coolant once a year or once every 2 years. I think the manuals on the John Deeres say change it once every 2 years. I change it once a year because changing coolant is a whole lot easier than rebuilding a dadgum engine because the O-rings are wore out. Just saying. You can do whatever you want to, but take advantage of this filter if you can. Keep it changed every time you service it. Do you probably need to change the coolant once a year with the filter on it? No. Am I going to change it once a year? Yes. Just because it's easier than rebuilding an engine. The Deere and our other International does not have that filter, so we change it once a year. I mean, everything that we use gets changed once a year. It helps maintain the life of your engine. So as always, I thank y'all for watching, and we will see you in part 3 of the International versus John Deere series. Thanks for watching. My name is Cole. You're watching Fletcher Farms, and we'll see you in the next one.